Good morning. I'm going to say good morning because we're recording this in the morning. Hello and welcome back. Media Matters 2026. Woohoo! I'm Maree Buscke, and of course my partner in crime, my brother from another mother, Marty Gibson. How are you?
Yeah, good. Thanks, Marie. Good to be back. Good to see you.
It is good to be back. Yeah, it is good to be back.
Cheery tangerine dream.
I know. I'm like new location, as we were just mentioned. It's so nice. I no longer have a wall right here. I've got room to move. It's very exciting. It's great. Loving
I thought it was actually fake. I was saying, I like your Ming vase collection, but it's actually really
is actually
your Ming vase.
It is. And I see I have to be careful because if I move my head, you can see my ring light in the background reflecting in it. But hey, it's not perfect. It's not perfect, but it works for us here at Media Matters, and it is good to be back. You and I, of course, stayed in touch right across the summer break. And I mean, one of the things that I usually take a pretty deep digital detox and don't do a hell of a lot. But of course, so much unfolded, particularly after Christmas. I did break that rule. I didn't go in too deep, but it was very, very difficult not to engage and stay abreast across some stories. And of course, one of the biggest ones was the weather event of a few weeks back, which culminated in the tragedy of 8 lives lost in your backyard, Marty. How's the community coping after that?
It's tough to say because I'm not. I'm not in a situation where I'm seeing so many people that I can gauge it. Really, I mean, what I said last week is that it seemed to become a lightning rod for a lot of static that was in the air. People's resentment at bureaucracy, people's resentment toward Maori ownership of things that were perceived as assets of the region, and wanting control but not necessarily wanting responsibility. Whether or not that was correct, the removal of trees because they were exotic had been a factor in that. And also it's been a lightning rod for Maori resentment, that this is Papa Tuanuku, throwing off the colonisers kind of thing, and of course it was all very unseemly while there were still bodies being looked for. And I read Audrey Young reported Labour leader Chris Hipkins saying 2 years ago, Grant Robertson and I took to Cabinet a paper that offered $6 billion worth of funding for national resilience to deal with the fact that we are now prone to far more extreme weather events. Unfortunately, this government cuts all of that funding. And then Finance Minister Nicola Willis responded, and I can't remember what her voice is like, but all they had done was say, in the future, we will borrow $6 billion for potential projects. Our government has actually done the work of identifying specific projects, and I just want to say I think it's a real shame that in the wake of what has been a tragedy, Chris Hipkins has been so quick to leap into something I see as quite petty. So, yeah, there's that. And you can imagine how awful it would be if, one of your kids was still buried under that landslide to see all that.
Oh, yeah, and the Greens. I mean, in an absolutely shocking case of not reading the mood of the nation, instantly jumping on the climate change bandwagon was, I thought, of exceptionally poor taste. I have to admit, the general reportage overall from legacy media for them actually wasn't too bad in parts. I engaged in a bit of RNZ, a bit of Herald, looked at One News coverage. There was a lot of stuff that they did discuss and things that were sort of controversial, but they also stayed away from a couple of the big glaring obvious things. And the one person that I thought covered those most profoundly was Ian Wishart. He did a fantastic investigative piece with the centrist. Paul Brennan spoke to him during the break just over a week ago. If you haven't caught that interview with Paul and Ian, it's fantastic. And Ian, too, just highlighted a couple of the things that he has been banging on about for years
The
now.
amnesia.
Yes, but also, again, the legacy media reporting right at the beginning, I think it was this was unprecedented rainfall for the region. I mean, 2005 was actually the unprecedented rainfall for the region at 346 millimetres versus the 274 that you got a few weeks back. And let's not forget, in that 2005 deluge, that's when all of that massive lahar of tree and debris and everything came down at Matata, which is covered in the opening of the Managed Out documentary. So, that event in itself was huge. So to start coverage off the premise of a lie and media making that mistake yet again and not double checking those facts, which are easily identifiable and checkable, I have to admit, in my view, was sloppy.
Well, I mean, the fact, again, you're looking in the wrong place if you want shame about lying to look at Chris Hipkins. But yeah, to say we're now prone to far more extreme weather events, it's simply the opposite is true. We're less prone to it. Far fewer people die as a result of weather. But it's one of those things. 65% of people go, yeah, I guess that's what happens. I don't want to be one of those tinfoil hat wearing people who gets booted out of the village for having a different view. So, yeah.
Yeah, so an independent review has been called by the Tauranga Council and also supported by iwi, I understand. Whether or not anything comes of it, for me, looking at all the coverage, everything that I've read, take the climate stuff out and the deaths, particularly of the 6 at the campground, for me were potentially preventable in a climate that we have in our bureaucracy as a governance of absolute overwhelming safetyism. It was that overwhelming process and safetyism that actually essentially, in my view, led to the passing of those people. When you had rescuers there right at the time, I mean, you and I both know Alana Ratner. She was one of the very first group of people that were there on site when it happened. And you've got, builders, people with skills, actual skills to make things happen and keep things going, being forced off because they didn't have footwear on. This is a crisis. I don't think, but again, we've seen this safetyism, that potentially people could have been saved. And one of the people ringing the alarm about the potential imminent risk of that landslide was one of the women who lost her life. And then there was the chap, was it McCarty, who contacted emergency services, and that process, hours they had to actually go in and inform people. And I looked at it, and it was, you brought it up several times last year, the fantastic Catherine Ennis-Carter, she brought it up in correspondence with us. I looked at those the Milgram experiments. People will do things if someone of authority comes and tells them to do something, they will deliver that lethal dose. Well, I looked at this as a case of Milgram, because that authority person wasn't the one going through the campground saying, we have an imminent risk, you need to be removed now. People just ignored it and stayed there. And that is so sad,
Yeah, it's a paradox, isn't it? Because
it is a paradox.
Yeah, you'd think safetyism would make people more willing to act in the interests of safety, but it creates a form of decision paralysis as well, because the laws and rules become so complex that, it becomes a tar baby that no one wants to punch. The one of the features of the public sector is people become very adept at yes minister dodging of responsibility. That's part of the art of it. So.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You brought up such an interesting point there in terms of that paradox. Did you catch the news that broke around the new grading system for reporting for education that Erica Stanford put out a couple of days ago?
No.
No, so she's quietly doing a lot of work in this space. But there were several education stories that have dropped. And of course, they all drop because all the kids are going back to school. And there was a cluster of 3 of them. And one of them was preschoolers entering primary school do not even have some of the basic functions, right down to some of them are not toilet trained, don't know their own, can't recognise their own letters in their own name and the like. And the blame there was, these children probably aren't being engaged in ECE. And for me, there's a whole big elephant in the room because, a lot of those children are also the ones that during that ECE window were locked down. And, is this the wavefront of the damage done to those children during that 2020-2021 period? Who knows?
Are we at the period of the mouse experiment where, mothers just abandon their young and kill them, and then the beautiful ones go off and just focus on grooming? I say to kids whenever I can, do not give the education system a monopoly on your curiosity or your sense of duty to learn about the world. It's your responsibility. It was interesting. My kids starting school, and I had a meeting with both of the younger ones' teachers. And made the mistake of saying to me, so what do you, what are your expectations?
Well, and what did you say, Martin? What were your expectations?
We've understood clearly that child-directed learning is a bust, and that children do not direct themselves to master the times tables, and they do not direct themselves to read challenging books. They do not direct themselves to become better at writing. So it's my expectation that, having understood that is a failure, we're moving to more teacher-directed learning. Don't teach my kids that they might be born in the wrong gender and stuff, or to try to teach them. I think I've immunised them pretty well against that. But yeah. Yes. I think, I mentioned towards the end of last year, I think we've reached a whole lot of high tides. But tsunamis are always the most damaging when they're going out. I think we've reached the high tide of people being scared of being called racist. I think that's gone the way of the fear of being called a bigot now.
Yeah. Well, the people that I talk to in my culture space, so from an American standpoint, they reckon that peak woke was reached in 2021. And I've always maintained New Zealand's a funny old place, and we're usually 4 to 5 years behind everyone else, so it seems. Mm. And if you look at it through that lens, I think you're right. We have actually reached our high tide. And the high tide, I think, actually was just prior to 2023 for us, because that's, is that the election. Because that was the signalling of whatever we've been doing is not working for us as an individual and we want to change. And then, of course, as we've discussed across the last couple of years, is that those who were given the elected mandate by us have often been obstructed at every single turn. So, yeah, I agree with you. I mean, in terms of what was the response from the teacher once you set out your expectations for your youngest two returning to school this year?
They acknowledged that that was a factor. Mm. I was also said, I'd really like it. And, I quoted that Massey study that's just bugged me ever since I saw it, where and a lot of people who've got kids at school will have seen this, the kids who are best at maths being co-opted in to pull the ones who are not so good up to create equity. That muddle-headed idea that if we hobble some of the kids who've got talent and, give the ones who don't a bit more, then equity. No one wants to talk about IQ. And no one wants to talk about how much better it is if we ensure that the kids who are the best at various things be as good as they can be. It's good for all of us. They might get richer, but...
So then the second article, just carrying on the same, the second article I saw, so the first one was these 5-year-olds entering primary school with the most basic skills that they would expect to have happened in early childhood development, either at home or within ECE not occurring. The second thing was 15,000 kids between years 12 and 13 leaving school. They have been found not even to have to meet the most basic literacy levels, literacy and numeracy levels, which I know as Minister Stamford that's been very sharp on her radar. But again, still incredibly concerning because, with high unemployment, youth unemployment exceptionally high, where do those kids go? Do they go into training programs through polytechnics to develop loans without the skills that they require in order to actually set them up for life? So that was that metric. And then this third story was this new reporting platform that Minister Stamford was looking at in terms of how you measure our children whilst they're within the schooling system and how you report that back to parents. And you can see a harking back to how things were with us. And I've said this before. If you're a parent, particularly, most parents now are in their 20s and 30s, well, 30s actually, aren't they? Most parents are in their 30s now. If you believe that primary schooling especially as it was when you were at primary school, believe me, you're gravely wrong. Now, when you're like you and I in our 50s, we can see it really acutely, especially you in your 50s with children in the primary system. It is concerning, and that's where as parents you've got to step up to fill the void and get in there. But it does worry me that so many parents either simply do not have the time to be able to do it because they're pressured via work, or themselves do not have the skills to be able to do it. And then that's before we even get into the ones that certainly do not have the desire to do it because they believe that that's what the state is there for. Education is a huge issue.
That's before we even get into the reality that in the 80s there were 12,000 people from the Indian subcontinent in New Zealand. Now there's 250,000. If you looked at a truck even 10 years ago, chances are, often it was a Māori guy driving it. Now that's rare. It's almost all people of Indian origin. And those people, and as I've said before, I'm a member of an Indian family, so I understand the way they value education. And you're replacing people who've become fat with comfort, with people who remember what it's like for education to be the difference between starving and being comfortable, and that they're a bit hungrier.
So looking at that, because of course in the news again this week was the march across the bridge, attempted by Destiny Church and the Freedom and Rights Coalition to go across. They weren't able to, and that sort of sparked that entire selective bridge crossing mentality that NZTA appear to have. Immigration is going to be a massive hot potato again this election. It's already been benchmarked to be that way. As someone who is part of an Indian family, you spent a lot of time in the country, you understand the culture. What are your views in terms of the concerns? Are the likes of Brian Tamaki, does he have genuine concern, or is this clickbaiting in order to get outrage going and to get people engaged in a topic that isn't actually really an issue? What are your thoughts around all that?
Yeah, it's throughout the West, immigration's being used to destroy Western civilization and make a homogenous people that don't have the unity to topple authoritarian governments. The combination of introducing people with a very clear direction who are tacitly given the idea, you're more morally upstanding than these people, and they, you've got, you're basically, there's an idea of conquest around it. And also, as I said last year a fair bit, we still have the remaining Christian ideals where we value telling the truth, and we've got to understand that people who would like to see Western civilization collapse don't have that same value, whether they're practicing tekia, chutzpah, or one of the many Maori words for lying. There is, there's not the shame that maybe we project that people should feel when they're just bald-faced lying. And, it goes to socialism as well, where the ends justify the means. So you can get Christopher Hipkins saying, the weather events are getting worse and worse. A cursory examination would reveal that's bullshit, but it suits his purposes, which is to do the managed out stuff that Klaus Schwab, who made him a young global leader, wants. Indian, I did ask my wife at one point what she thought about that. And she said, well, Indians work hard and they're not violent. And that's something, it's not like they're coming from sub-Saharan Africa where you don't necessarily have those two factors.
Yeah,
but
indeed.
It would be nice if we could have that zipper consensus that I've talked about as a nation, and rather than having all this time focused on our differences and getting to the point where we're understanding, we've gone from thinking, well, people who are different to me still live by similar standards and have similar aspirations. We've been subject to a fair bit of pressure to see people outside of our communities as evil. And in preparation for this, I went back to, you'd be pleased to know, Mattias Desmet's Psychology of Totalitarianism thing that he wrote way back in August 2020. And he said, we have to consider the current fear and psychological discomfort to be a problem in itself, a problem that cannot be reduced to a virus or any other object of threat. Our fear originates on a completely different level, that of the failure of the grand narrative of our society. This is the narrative of mechanistic science in which man is reduced to a biological organism, a narrative that ignores the psychological, spiritual, and ethical dimensions of human beings, and therefore has a devastating effect at the level of human relationships. Something in this narrative causes man to be isolated from his fellow man and from nature. Something in it causes man to stop resonating with the world around him. Something in it turns human beings into atomized subjects. It is precisely this atomized subject that, according to Hannah Arendt, is the elementary building block of the totalitarian state.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
It's one of the things that, I went to, and actually the other person I interviewed yesterday was Shubs, and I went to visit them with iwi whakamahu when they came to Hawke's Bay. And, last year there was that whole sort of talk about tino rangatiratanga, in terms of self-sovereignty and, you as an individual and your importance of an individual. And I think what that highlights, isn't it, is that when you have people, governments, those in control, whatever you want to call them, reduce humanity, reduce individuals to commodities. And when you look at the word of commodity, it is common. You're just putting everybody together into the same boat, to create equity. When you actually take away that, what did Zohan Mandami called it, individual, rugged individuality. If you actually take away individualism, if you take away the agency of the individual and you pull them into a collective and you create this common entity that is a commodity, look at the evil and the ills that can be created. And, I look at, just taking it back to the education example, is that if we're a parent, that's one of the things as a parent that we do need to do. We need to find the time to strengthen those little individuals that we've created, don't we? And send them out in the world. I'm literally just about to send our second one out into the world and have an empty nest. And you've just, you got to get your licks in. And I know in your house, Marty, you get your licks in with the kids a heap to make sure that they are incredible little thinkers.
Yeah. And I mean, again, that's it creates inequality. But the elevation of equality to a religion has, I think in time to come, we'll see how much of a folly that was. In the same way as, abandoning Christianity has created that Nietzschean situation where, we've killed God and all the oceans of the world won't wash the blood off our hands. There's a good quote from Hilaire Belloc, who's I'm not 100% sure when he was around, but just the quote stands on its own. A civilization can survive the loss of wealth, of power, even of learning, but it cannot survive the loss of its own explanation. Modern Europe still moves by the momentum of a Christian past, but it no longer understands why it moves at all. Its laws, its respect for the person, its conception of justice and duty were not discovered by reason alone, nor produced by chance. They were the result of a definite creed long held and deeply believed. When that creed is denied, the habits it created linger for a generation or two, but they no longer renew themselves. What was once tradition becomes routine. What was conviction becomes custom. And custom, once questioned, collapses. That is the precise condition of Europe today. And, I've quoted Unwin, in his mid-1920s examination of collapsed civilizations saying, like clockwork, of all the 84 that he studied, once you remove the stigma from premarital and extramarital sex, a civilization has got 3 generations before it collapses. So if we take the sexual revolution of the late 60s as that starter gun, here we are. And the media, getting back to the media matters, they've got 48 months interest-free ads on the front cover of the New Zealand Herald. They don't want to say, hey, maybe we're showing signs of civilizational collapse that, have all of these common factors, whether it's fetishes around transvestitism or, food or sport or whatever, the debasement of currency, stupid foreign wars.
Yeah. I told you about the book that I read, the one serious book I read over the summer break, didn't I? It was called The Case Against the Sexual Revolution. Yeah, it was called The Case Against the Sexual Revolution by Louise Perry. I think you would enjoy it, and it covers everything from the removal of the taboo and the introduction of the contraceptive pill all the way through to porn, the degradation of the family, fatherlessness, the responsibility, all of those things. And it's, one of those situations it falls under the title of Be Careful What You Wish For. Something that seemed like a really good idea at the time can actually turn around to come back and bite you in the ass several decades later. Yeah.
It amuses people to hear me lamenting about that because, the 90s, so much fun, so little proof. But I'm running back the other way pretty fast. And, because I now often have a house full of 14-year-old girls, I get to see firsthand just how much of a number they've had done on them. All of these, crazy ideas. And if you question them, it's not an engaged thing. It's they've internalized that idea that people who don't believe what they've been told are evil. There's not you don't debate with evil.
Mm-hmm. What in terms of that? Well, in terms of all of that, what are some of the things that has caught your eye coming back today? Because I know that there were several channels that you were looking at. I don't want to miss anything. So what sort of else leapt out at you that you think will be a theme moving forward, potentially for this year?
This year? Well, I think if you look at the idea of revolution, where you've got the communist idea, it was actually came from a philosopher that predated Marx. I'm just trying to remember which one it was, and I'm drawing a blank, but it was the idea of antithesis, thesis, synthesis. So you identify how you don't like what's there, you come up with a criticism of it, and then you form an idea of what might replace it. I think like last year was peak antithesis. We kind of, maybe, and even I'm seeing quite a lot of questioning, even of pretty fundamental stuff, like the idea that men and women are the same. They've just got different, bits. I've been seeing a study by Tanya Singer going around a lot, where women are shown to have empathy for thieves and criminals that men don't. So even if they're guilty, but if they're being punished, women feel more empathy for them, whereas men don't. And we've got a whole lot of, the legal system tipped into majority female a few years ago. And I think we're going to see more people questioning, well, what effect does having a whole lot of judges with that set of ideas have on our justice system? And more to the point, we've got this idea, we're seeing people who are guilty as victims, but we've somehow ignored their victims. And I think we're going to see a swing back. The key with the thesis and, what we do next is how do we avoid fishtailing? How do we avoid overcompensation? So this year is going to be the year of trying to get out of the slide we're in without going too far the other way.
Which is always the concern.
And so, I thought if I were to write about this stuff, it would almost be a good idea to preface it with a statement of truth that people could hold in their minds as reading it. So if I was sort of talking about some of these issues around gender differences, I've got a wife who's a very hard-working career woman. I have 2 daughters. I really want them to have a great life, and it's not necessarily something that reflects on what I want so much as what I want for them.
Yeah. Hey, have you been following? Yeah, absolutely. Because of course, I've got 2 boys, and I had this conversation a number of times last year. I've just been so conscious of the fact that my husband and I have been raising 2 sons in an environment where the social zeitgeist has been telling them as young white men that they're toxic. How do I actually then raise my sons in a society to say, no, you're not toxic, actually. You're really vital, important young men who need to be strong and comfortable in their own skin and actually be part, to develop your own potential and not listen to that because you aren't toxic just because they tell you that you are. But you also need to conduct yourselves in such a way that you are net positive to the environment that you're in, not a net negative. So, as I said, number 2's about to embark literally in a couple of days down to university, and it's exciting to see him go. Also, I'm now actually getting to the I'm going to miss him stage, but it is exciting. It is, and we've just, number one, the older one has had his first full year away, and having him home for much of the summer and seeing the change in him, the confidence in him, because he went straight out to flatting and living independently with another buddy in central city Auckland, which is no small thing, and what a difference! What a difference in his confidence and self-assurity. And here's and again, I want to get your views on this. So we had some people over for lunch, and they are actually immigrants to New Zealand and from Europe. And we got onto the conversation of this in terms of independence, of the difference between education and skills. So they are both people that didn't go to university. They've gone and developed their profession and their career through skills. You are somebody that's done both. You've had both the education and also now turned your hand at business and skills in terms of what you now do. I didn't go to university. I've got a very close relative. He's the same. He's got a double degree, but he's actually now an electrician. So in terms of kids coming through, I mean, more education is really valuable and important, but have we devalued skills? And whether they be general life skills like the ability to do your washing and clean your room and balance your bank account and cook for yourselves and live independently, right through to trades. I mean, has there been an over emphasis on tertiary education as the panacea that will be the best thing for our kids?
Oh, yes. And you know, there's an interesting fashion that's prevalent among young men now that I've seen lamented and wailed about by women. And it's young men growing daggy moustaches and mullets with short hair. And I was thinking about that in the gym the other day, and I wanted to ask this young guy, but I didn't get the chance to. But I think what that is it's a movement away from appearance, from style to substance. I think it's almost a deliberate worrying about how you look as a feminine conceit. I would like to appear daggy, but have stuff behind that's impressive, whether it is skills, whether it is character, whether it is making smart choices. And, you know, that generation's drinking 80% less booze than we did. So, you know, I said before, and there were some letters, saying this was a good idea, and I've had largely positive responses to it. I've been increasingly feeling a responsibility to do something that kids can watch and share that almost is a balance to what they're being told on climate change, on the various other things that they're indoctrinated in. And part of that could be, look, this is what you've been told about sex. Have a think about why you haven't been told what sort of man makes a great father, what sort of man or woman makes a great spouse, how to be a great spouse, and how it's, the qualities of a good husband do share some aspects with the qualities of being a good wife, but they're not exactly the same. So, yeah, I mean, it's easy to scoff at young people, but they've had a number done on them. But the good thing for them is it's become so gross. It's almost like when a dream gets so ridiculous that you wake up, that can't be. Or if you're meditating, you get it. You notice your talky mind just becomes so crazy that there's an aspect of your consciousness that observes it and goes, doesn't necessarily say anything, but it kind of puts on that face. And I think they've had that. It's just like, yeah, nah. And so they're taking to bits a lot of stuff. There's a phenomena on social media, young men reading challenging books. I think that there's potentially, quite a major swing back to that stuff. And I mean, I talk to my kids about how to be a good spouse and what. Certainly talking to young women, there is a pressure on you to abandon innocence and a pressure for you to see your innocence as weakness or, return to seeing it as something valuable. My job as a parent is to create an environment where you can retain your innocence.
Yeah.
And it's true for boys too.
Yeah. I've joined a book club. Yeah, speaking of challenging books, I've joined a book club. I haven't
What's
been
it
in a book
called?
club. It's the Thought Crimes Book Club, hosted by Annie O'Brien. Because I follow Annie on Substack, and I saw this book club, and I saw her stack of books that she read. She put out a list of her key books that she read for last year, and a number of those books. There were a few that I had read, and there were a few that were sitting in my stack to read. And yeah, so she's put together this book club, one book a month, and I sort of thought, you know what, I need some discipline to actually push me out of my two-track reading, as I like to call it, which is serious nonfiction. Very heavy topics and absolute, utter, unadulterated trash. I need to find some middle ground. So I think the book club is going to fill my donut, my literary donut, as it were. I've also got booked, and I think you'll find this quite interesting, a associate professor from the University of Austin in Texas, talking about literature and the importance of reading some of those older texts from the 19th and 20th century and the value of reading those texts for our kids today. I'm really looking forward to that interview. I'm doing that next week. So, yeah, I think that is just, I think you've had a good nail on the head there, Marty. I really do.
Yeah, well, I mean, I do read my kid, and I was saying this to the teachers as well, and I sort of more or less volunteered to come in and do it, and I think I will, just go in and read them a story. I read my kids John Steinbeck's book of Mice and Men, and what always surprised me was how much more invested they were in the story than in a film, because the film's right there, it sort of presents it all on a plate to you. But there's something about a book that really, because your brain has to generate the world, you're more invested in it. So, I was thinking, I did have a flip through Mice and Men, and I thought, well, I was happy enough reading it for my own kids, but I sort of flicked to the end where the guy's blowing his friend's brains out, and I was thinking, I might get some pushback from parents from this, but I'm just about to start Joseph Conrad's Heart of Darkness with them. But again, I'm sad not every kid gets that, because every kid deserves that kind of time, as you said earlier.
Well, it's also to, them using words and language to create a very vivid picture.
Well, and also it provides a great opportunity for discussion. I mean, I've got to get back to it. I've 2/3 read The Cruel Sea, Nicholas Montserrat's book about a corvette crew that's escorting Atlantic convoys. And it's, there's been a very, very careful curation of what children learn away from history. And when I've been studying the Bible a lot lately, because that was one of the things I wanted, and I wanted to do it with other people. So that's been tremendously interesting, because there was that momentum, that coasting on the momentum, and it's not until you start studying it that you realize how many sayings and allusions are biblical. And there are many things I hadn't realized about. I hadn't realized how hyperlinked it is. I hadn't realized about how the same themes play out in so many different ways. And if you study that, it becomes easier to make sense of history. In the same way as if you study robust history, it's easier to look at that material like Mattias Desmet's and go, look, they say here is something new, but no, it has all been done before.
Yeah. Just lastly, before we get on to some mailbag, is I had a look at the Epstein files, because of course that's all over X right now. And I've not really engaged a hell of a lot with the Epstein files, because, I just look at that and find it all so unsavory. But this last tranche that seems to have been dropped, as I said to you before, one of the things that I've now seen, just a whole bunch of stuff is just thrown out to me in the last few months about as you said many times last year to me, I'm really quite sick of teachers or people in education having creepy sexual interest in my child. And that to me is often, I think, is now I think the nub of these Epstein files, and one of the theories that I've seen is the guy who was a mainstream journalist, I think his name was Ben Swan, who was stoutly literally lost his career and cancelled because he talked about this Pizzagate paedophilia ring. We remember our Benjamin Buscke situation from last year, and he's, literally saying Jeffrey Epstein, he is Pizzagate. I mean, this paedophilic ring that was created, this is what we're talking about. This is the nub of the Epstein files. Isn't the fact that, Trump's mentioned 27,000 times or so on. This a Lord of the Peerage is now just resigned from the House of Lords, or, Andrew Mountbatten Windsor has definitely got himself in a sticky wicket. No, this is a organised, nasty, vicious, paedophilic ring that has been going on with people of tremendous power for a very long time. And when you see that, and I mean, you mentioned the Luciferian nature of things, but also what they're doing, the dumbing down of our children in the education system, the breaking down of the ick factor, and the, no more stranger danger to talk to kids anymore. I mean, that poor man with the lollipops and the jacket is just a minor attracted person. You don't need to worry about him. And even what they do.
If pedophilia is just another sexual orientation, then burying them is just another form of gardening, surely.
Yeah, absolutely. And I just looked at that, and for me, that was the whole glaring thing of the Epstein files, is this is just yet another example of the attack that this civilization and society have on our children. They're coming for the kids. I feel like they've always been coming for the kids, and what they've realised is if they get the kids early, then they don't need to come for them as adults because they've already got them. It's very frustrating, Marty.
Yeah. Well, that's where we have a responsibility to push back, and as I said, I feel an increasing responsibility to produce something that New Zealand kids can look at that's very careful and its lack of overreach, but still offers them something to chew over. And it's something as I said, I say to some of the 14-year-olds that I'm around, someday you'll be a great parent. You understand that this is a confusing time for everyone, and it's as if they're trying to make it more confusing, which I think's unfair. But keep doing the schoolwork and keep building your character.
Mm. Hey, now, have you got anything else you want to jump in there before I jump in to do a bit of mailbag? Well, because I know you will have.
I mean, I read, and what we might do the lazy form of Media Matters, where I mention a whole lot of stuff, and then you've got the links to look at it yourself, dear listeners. I looked at Muriel Newman's State of the Nation, was as excellent as you'd expect from her. Pretty dense, pretty hard to winnow it down to sound bites, but she criticised the coalition not moving fast enough on various things. Research clearly shows the optimum size of government is around 25% of GDP. At that level, the private sector has the room to innovate, expand and grow, creating the jobs, wealth and prosperity a country needs. At over 30%, New Zealand's government is too big and state bureaucracy has become a real barrier to progress. She praised them for law and order and some of their stuff at education. But there was a few themes. There were a few people who were picking up Cottrell, Prebble, race-based policies, and basically talking about how New Zealand was likely to see a similar move away from the major parties that the UK had with reform. I read David Seymour's treaty should mean equal rights, not race-based law. which he, put quite a sober argument for. How what they were doing was in line with that. The outcome this is the outcomes of an obsession with race. The outcomes have not improved lives for any New Zealanders. If anything, the gaps have got worse since the Clark government said it would close them. There is a better way: equal rights. Each person deserves the right to live as they choose, so long as they're not harming others. In the second article of the treaty, it is called tino rangatiratanga, or self-determination. I liken it to the English expression, an Englishman's home is his castle. I think that's the intent of that phrase. This is in keeping with the pioneering spirit that brought Marty and every other wave of settlers to our shores. Our justice policy backs the victims of crime who are disproportionately Māori. The return of 3 strikes is at the forefront of this effort to put victims first. Oranga Tamariki now puts a child's well-being first and adults' ideas about culture second. I could go on. In short, we are promoting practical tino rangatiratanga. We are making it possible to determine how your life turns out, no matter when your ancestors got here. That is how successful countries keep their young and attract more talent to our shores. It is rooted in deep principle and the story of how we got here. I read Tauranga Port Saga exposes flaws in Christopher Luxon's fast-track planning reforms by Richard Prebble, which is very interesting because I've seen both sides of that, where I've spoken with one of the people who's leading the revolt against the port expansion, and their basic objections were, it's going to harm the moana. We just want to stop it. And it's kind of like, yeah. I sort of tried to interest them in ideas of why don't you ensure that the harm's minimised and that you improve the outcomes of people by harnessing the economic development. It's a lot of issues like that with Māori come from that proverb, kaua e mate wheke, mate uro, which means don't die like an octopus, die like a hammerhead shark. And Māori leaders feel good saying, fight, fight, fight. And it's like, dude, you're 30 times more likely to be convicted of a violent crime than non-Māori. Maybe what this needs isn't more anger and more threats of violence. Maybe we could try something different. There's an insipid, and we've got to keep on at this, some insipid article about as Australia's online harm crackdown reshapes the debate, New Zealand must find its own path. And reading this was like, it was by 2 authors that I didn't write down, but it sounds like a project for media studies at university. Online harm can take many forms, including exposure to illegal material, AI-driven racial bias, and the non-consequential sharing of intimate images. So there's not the defense of free speech that you'd hope that journalists have. It's more a case of, is the government going to protect us? Kind of scaredy cat.
Ass covering too.
Insipidness. What's that?
And ass covering too.
Yeah. Reform has been slowed down by political caution, particularly around concerns about freedom of expression. Incredible.
Yeah. One of the things when I spoke to Shubs yesterday was I said to him at the end, what is one thing in terms of healing the nation, one simple thing that somebody can do? And he said, just start a conversation with someone that you wouldn't normally start a conversation with. Just
that was old
say
Shubs,
hello.
because he has gotten really, there are some people on X particularly who are really hating on the shubs. And there's a fundamental inability by many people to understand the difference between grift that takes the form of grabbing public money and getting your snout deep into that trough and making a value proposition and getting people to voluntarily give you their money. So I've got very little concern about that aspect of it.
No, look, having interacted with them personally, they're certainly not travelling high on the hog, I can tell you that. And having done a tour situation where you are actually travelling around every day in a different location, often interacting with people, it is exhausting. I mean, I think I saw you when we were in Gisborne and you put your arm around me and you said, "You were right there, chum." And I think my reaction to you was, this was a hell of a lot easier when I was 30, not in my approaching my mid-50s. It is exhausting. They're exhausted. I mean, when I spoke to him yesterday, he is so tired but energized. So if he wanted to go out and do a jolly and a holiday, trust me, this is not what you would do. But also, too, I would take any one person that is taking the time out to go and do and speak and try to do something positive, which is what their intent is, to heal, to try and have those conversations, to learn. A lot of the healing is within themselves. Karina spoke about that last week when I talked to her. Then someone sitting at home banging something out on a keyboard. They're actually getting out there and giving it a go. Whether or not they achieve anything meaningful, I don't know, but at least they're trying.
Yeah, well, it's a lot easier, as I've often said, than hearing a whistle go and jumping over the top of a parapet and charging a machine gun nest. It's still tough, but it's better to do the stuff that's comparatively tough than absolutely tough.
Yeah, indeed. Hey, we'd actually got a bit of love across the break from various people for mailboxes. Thank you to everybody that sent through their feedback to inbox@rcr.media or 2057 being the text. The first one that I'm going to read is really lovely. It's a lovely personal one that I think you can connect with Marty. Hi, Marty. Firstly, I need to gush about how much I love your and Maree's commentary. Oh, thank you. You two are the best. If we could vote for those who we could vote for, then you two would get my vote for sure. Oh, gosh. And this isn't from Mike from Foxton. So thank you for that. But I can speak for myself. There are certainly no political ambitions in my future. Such profundity, such humour, such clarity. You're doing such valuable mahi. I was an original foundation member, slightly harder times now, but I'm selling my vehicle, so I'm back in soon. Your dad was my GP. He delivered my first son 38 years ago. I have much respect for Brian. He read a whole bunch of info from Hilary Butler that we put together when jabbing time was due. He said then it was our choice. So we made the right choice. And 5 children later made the right choice for them too. He spent a whole bunch of time with me in one of my down and confused times. He reassured me that I was worthwhile and loved, which helped me turn around my thinking. I will never forget that kindness he showed me. And also, I worked at the Riverview Rest Home with one of Marie's aunts or grands was there. Yes, that was my grandmother was there at, I think it's, oh gosh, I can't even remember the name of it, but yes, it will be my grandmother. And my aunts visited frequently, so you would have come across all of them. I can't quite remember her name. I also played music at Ryman, where Barbara was in the special care unit. We're all connected, it seems. Keep doing God's work. Cheers, Abadiah Ken. Isn't that lovely? And it is. We are all connected, aren't we?
So much. Ken, that's very touching. I sent that to my dad as well. So he said,
"Oh, did you?
Yeah, maybe I did one or two things right, even though I was an old white man."
Oh, so, yeah, no, it's... Yeah, it is just, we are all connected, and I think we can't lose sight of that. It's just really important. Right. Hi, guys. You know better. All terrorism is somewhere along the line connected to governments. Same for the Sydney shooting. Who benefits? Q bono, says David. Yes, I have to admit, the zoom out. Marty, I know you're very keen to look at the zoom out this year, aren't you? Right, this one is from...
I think it helps things make sense, doesn't it? Because, and again, that's... the old history doesn't repeat, but it does rhyme adage. It's worth understanding what history is.
Yes, indeed. This one here, agree, Maree, with the benefit of hindsight, this is correct. Yes, they will use this. And this was into the media matters that we had with media bias, power, and public trust. But what about the chilling reality of people like me that took the shots and were life-changingly harmed by the vaccines? Why do Labor never address this? Why did they shut our voices down? Well, I can tell you why they didn't do it, because the thing is that they don't want to admit that they're wrong, and they don't want to address it, because essentially, as I said before about commodities, you're a commodity in this. As far as I think you're concerned, that you're collateral damage. Would that be a fair cop, Marty? In terms of those harms
They lied.
and facing
People
up to them?
died. They should be tried.
Yeah. Yeah. And remember too, the end of this month, that report is due to be delivered to government, COVID inquiry phase 2, 26th of February. When it gets released out to the public, I'm unsure, it'll probably be within maybe a week or so of that date, but look out, probably early March. We will all get to have a look, and we'll get to see whether or not there's going to be any accountability. All I'm saying, people, is don't hold your breath, because we don't want you going blue in the face. Why did they shut down the medical world from helping us openly with what was happening? We suffered and we still suffer. Have never known hell like this. The reactions on our bodies for so many were violent. I have a health science education, so to be suddenly in a world that has no voice or help was beyond evil. It's all evil. People were and are still dying. I wrote to Jacinda and all of them begging for help. This is true evil. It was at this time that they absolutely revved up the media to make us disappear. It's relentless. Whatever was in those shots is evil and cruel, and I've never known pain like this. I'm so sorry that your talk made it bubble all up. Fee, look, Fee, this is just it. It is evil, and it is part of an evil historically. It is amazing what people can justify under the phrase the greater good, isn't it, Marty?
Yeah, I mean, I feel awful for, and I mean, my family have been affected in this way. I know quite a few people who've died suddenly, where disproportionately to how many you'd expect. It is. And I mean, as I've said before, it was my study of evil that in many ways created that change in last year, where I realized that the people who were orchestrating all of this stuff absolutely believed in some supernatural dimension to it. Some things, some patterns were very important to them. And they were doing things that couldn't merely be explained away by the usual self-interest, folly. There's something that about it that hated innocence, hated people's connection with each other, that wanted to, bring death and lies into the world.
Yeah, indeed. And also, again, Epstein files. There is links there now that communications between Epstein, Gates, and that sort of cabal of elites, that things such as a pandemic. I think someone actually said that they needed to create a commodity heading under pandemic, and actually how to profit from those sorts of events. This is
Yeah.
evil.
It was some fund
You
that
know.
was triggered by a pandemic starting.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of ugly stuff that won't get examined in the media in those Epstein files. The number of times the word goyim is used as well, you know, in response to, well, you know, this is how we make money. You know, let the goyim do what they do. It's kind of like, it's not often you hear that.
No. This one's from the Backstage Pass webinar. Hi, Marty. Just watched you speaking about getting baptised in the pre-Christmas video, and I agree with what you said about the evil in the world. I'm a Christian and also have strong faith in our Creator and His Son, Jesus Christ. We must keep speaking the truth. And that is from another Maree, not me. So thank you very much for that. And thank you to
Thanks, Marie.
everybody who sent us through feedback. We do appreciate it. 2057 is the text. Inbox at rcr.media is the email. And socials. Gosh, so many of you have been engaging with our socials across the break because those kept pumping through. Thank you for all those comments there as well. There's been a whole heap of them. I've been trying to make a bit more of a concerted effort to jump in and have a look at some of those. So thank you everyone for being part of those discussions and sharing those socials as well. It's a great way to introduce people to our content, and we do appreciate it. Right, an hour and 5 minutes is flowing by, Marty.
Yeah,
I know,
well,
just
that's
like
the rust. That's the rust brushed off. So, yeah, next week we'll be back more professional and prepared than ever. I was just going to say, I'd just echo what you're saying, and thanks so much to everyone who's engaging with it. I think this is our year, you know, and I think, as I've often said, you know, if you are someone who notices that and has the bravery to speak out against things that are manifestly wrong, then understand that you're not like most people, and you have a responsibility as such that's different to most people, because they do need your encouragement, and encouragement in the sense of they need to be given courage to step out of the matrix that's encircling them.
Yeah, indeed. Well, look, I'll see everybody again on Sunday. Backstage, if you're a Foundation member, you would have received an email. Backstage Pass is back, and that will be the first one for the year, is on Sunday. So I will see you then, certainly, and hopefully Marty will be able to join us. So until then, take care, and we will be back next week. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a great week.